This is Jason David Frank, and you're listening to the Geekcast Radio Network.
White Ranger Tiger Power, White Ranger Tiger Power, White Ranger Tiger Power, White Ranger Tiger Power.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Altered Geek Unlimited, episode 23. I'm your host, Steve Megatron Phillips, and unfortunately this week, there is no co-host. Why is that, you may be asking? Well, a few people had to work, a few people were not around, and a few people were recording new podcasts on... or a new test podcast on Geekcast Radio. So overall, it's just me. So I apologize if this episode may ramble at some points. I'm going to talk about some things that I know about and that may interest other people based on previous episode comments and content similar to that. So let's get into the episode and see what happens. So I want to jump into the GCRN Awards. Now, I know some people may be wondering what that whole thing has to do with. And I'm going to make it very simple. This is our first kind of foray into the world of the awards. We've done the top 100 animated series. We've done the top 100 animated films. There's yet to be an unnamed top 100 of some kind that will raise the ante, as it were, this year, and another Wars tournament that will do the same. So this is another experiment in that same vein of being able to give you, the listeners, fans and friends of Geekcast Radio, another avenue to be able to make yourselves heard. Now, when I say the awards thing, I also have to preface this by I have this set concept in my head of what I wanted to do with the awards and what my technical know-how is, and unfortunately they don't mesh up very well. My overall goal was I really wanted to set up where people could click on the images themselves to vote. Unfortunately, I don't quite have that capability yet. I'm going to look into it for next year, as well as how to incorporate fan votes to decide what goes in the nominees category. So this year it's kind of a best of, whether it's something the hosts like or something that we felt was standoutish compared to other shows. So again, apologize if things don't pop out there that people may want to see. Next year, I like I said, this will come out a lot better next year. This year, this will debut on February 1st for voting for the entire month of February until the March Geekcast Radio episode, where we reveal all the categories and have the actual award show. So there are many different categories in this award show. We have film, we have cartoon, we have television, we have tech, and we also have Geekcast Radio related stuff. Now, there's also 30 different categories to vote in. Why 30, you ask? Well, the film category actually takes up about 15 of it on its own. Cartoons takes up one. That will be more thought out in the future, but I couldn't go without an award show without mentioning something about the animated series kind of medium. Again, this was something we wanted to get out, and we didn't want to make it too overly complicated. I know with 30 categories it sounds that way, but it's not. Television has 7 different categories. Tech has 3, and Geekcast Radio has 4. The ones for TV that will be listed are Best TV Drama, Best TV Comedy, Best TV Sci-Fi, Best TV Action Adventure, Best TV Leads, like lead character of the show, Best TV Fails, meaning shows that have either fallen off the bandwagon, almost WTF moments, stuff like that, and Best TV Intro, which, let's face it, not a lot of TV shows have that anymore. So there's that. The Geekcast Radio ones are Best GCRN Core Podcast, Best GCRN Partner Podcast, Best GCRN Review Podcast, and, of course, the Best GCRN Feature. Again, we'll explain these a little bit more when it gets a little bit closer. We're almost to that point, but it's almost there. This podcast itself will encompass the cartoon, the TV, the tech, and the GCRN stuff, while MWire Weekly will cover all the things that are in the film category. Next year, I first see this to be a huge, expansive award show. But the goal with this is we want to be able to have more of a say than, say, the Oscars or other things, where it tends to be kind of lopsided based on what critics like instead of what people like. I know in some categories it could be true what wins, but I find myself disliking a lot of what wins. But I'm also a biased geek, so, take it for what you will. So I think I've rambled a little bit long on the awards breakdown, so I'll be right back after this. Alrighty, welcome back to Altered Geek Unlimited. We're going to jump into some media news. Based on feedback from the last episode, we got, I don't know if it's because the last episode was such a train wreck or because, which, again, not to get off on a tangent, I apologize for that. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the other episode, there were a lot of edits that had to go into that episode to get it to the point that you heard it. There was a lot of crackling, popping stuff going on. Danner's audio was missing. Normally, I'm able to use the master track, but the call recorder, because it botched up, it added the pops, and then it, of course, didn't record Danner. So there were points, obviously, that were pointed out that we didn't know exactly what Mike was referring to at points because Danner was answering them. I tried to cut that as much as possible, but in the TV show's discussion, that's where it fell flat, and I apologize. I probably should have just dubbed my voice in there to say the name of the shows because I knew what they were. But there's that. So getting into the media news, again, so I don't go on that 10-minute tangent there. We won't do it in the 10-minute blitz segment. That will be more so questions that you guys supply, that we can kind of bounce back and forth and do it that way. So once more, the media news. Well, there's a new indie magazine which is launching in February, which is actually local to my Flint, Michigan area. It's called Indiebration. So it's like indie film celebration. It's a magazine that is going to encompass a lot of different level stars. Some of them you may not consider actual stars anymore, or would be considered B, C, or D level stars at this point. They were never A-listers. So But it's not necessarily so that they can cover what everybody else covers. It's covering stuff that's any level of stuff that basically you could find in a theater that's low level, or stuff that's not in the theater but maybe on other mediums. So it's going to be interesting when that gets launched. They do have a Facebook page, which I'll have in the show notes, and I'm actually designing their website. So be sure to check that out when it gets all done. That will launch, I believe, at the end of this month for the magazine launch. Jumping into the next bit of info, Fox's Gotham series is basically going to be a giant Batman prequel. And as I've said this before, I almost don't care. And the reason I'm kind of that, I know it's kind of horrible to say that, but I think that they're almost kind of missing the bandwagon on it a little bit. For one, Fox has it. I don't foresee it lasting long. Just Fox's track record with things that they don't necessarily give a shot isn't quite there for me. I don't know. I don't trust them, more or less. So there's that. I'm hoping that it lasts a while and we can kind of see what direction it's actually going to go in. But I don't see it lasting long. It's supposedly, how they were talking about it, is going to focus on Commissioner Gordon. But the thing about it is they've just kind of let the cat out of the bag. It's a giant Batman prequel, which we kind of figured it would go there eventually, just not this soon. They said that the production will start soon on it, but it says Bruce Wayne will indeed be a big part of the show, saying that we will arc young Bruce Wayne from a child to the final episode of the series when he puts on a cape. So essentially we're going to get 10 more years of Smallville. And I wasn't enthused with Smallville. I think the way that show kind of went down, it was kind of boring. I understand why they were going through some of it, but I'm sorry, it should not have taken that long to put the cape on. It's ridiculous. I don't know. I couldn't get into it. I didn't. The concept in theory is great. The execution was poor, and I think partially CW milking the crap out of it was one aspect. The other aspect was the fact that it, again, you could have kind of like the Justice Society, but you couldn't have Superman put the cape on, and you couldn't mention Batman. I mean, it again. But they're going to basically pull a Smallville with this. But it says that Bruce will, that when we see him early in the series, he'll probably be around the age of 12. They're saying that they're also going to have the Penguin, the Riddler, Catwoman, and the Joker will be involved in some form. Which, why? I mean, I could see the Penguin more so because he, Cobblepot, he's kind of crime lord. Anyway, the Riddler, at this young stage of Bruce Wayne, I mean, I guess that they aren't going to reveal them right away. I'm guessing it'll probably be like a mid-series thing where they start having Edward Nygma show up, kind of like in the New 52 comics in the 0 year. And I'm sure Catwoman will show up the same, and then the Red Hood will show up and become the Joker. But they're stating that the famous rogues will be introduced, and we'll see how they get to become what they are. It's going to be like a giant operatic soap opera. I don't know. I have high hopes for it, but I don't really have any reason to care about another Batman prequel. That's probably the only thing about the new Batman vs Superman or Justice League movie or whatever they're calling it that has me kind of enthused, is the fact that they're not going back and telling another origin story like they've done numerous times. Everybody knows the origin of Batman. It never changes. Yeah, they changed Superman a little bit, but Batman doesn't really change. It's his parents get brutally murdered, and then he kind of goes on that training trip. So it's I really don't care about that in essence. I'd rather they just threw him into it, or took off from where it's or turned Zero Year into the actual series. Don't start it when he's a kid. Start it when he's later on and just built the suit. Kind of like they did with Arrow. I don't know. That would be, novel concept. Arrow's doing well. That bodes well. At least he puts on the damn costume. Superman never puts on the costume in Smallville. So to me, it's, I'm getting too worked up. I think I've talked on this too long. So yeah, after last week's episode, they kind of let slip that Michael Douglas is Hank Pym in Ant-Man. Anybody that cares to actually give me some of an update on who Ant-Man is and what the two differences are between the Hank Pym and Scott Lang versions that Paul Rudd's playing. I have no idea anything about this character at all. I know that he's kind of supposedly like the launch of the third tier of the Marvel universe. Which, is fine and dandy and everything. I don't have any problem with it. I'm not a huge Marvel fan, as I've stated before. I like Wolverine, Iron Man, Spider-Man, and the Sword, but I don't particularly care for all the secondary, tertiary characters. But that's also because I don't know anything about them. Whereas DC, I know quite a bit about a lot of their characters, even if they're not the most familiar. So, anybody that cares to kind of link me to that and kind of so I can get an idea of what, or maybe even a good comic resource that would tell me what I need to know to kind of understand this. Because I know it's big news. I don't understand anything about it. So moving on to something that's not TV, there's been claims around that the Nielsen ratings are outdated and pushes for cross-platform metrics acceptance. And it's from, this was a statement by Kevin Riley, chairman of Entertainment for Fox, saying basically that their TV ratings are going to fall flat, and the same time a year ago it was down nearly 20%. So they're basically calling so that it doesn't just rate the TV stuff. It takes into consideration, the video on demand, digital and otherwise, stuff like Hulu, like Netflix, like, Comcast on demand, like all those different mediums taken into consideration, because people, let's face it, don't necessarily watch things when it's fresh. I myself, I don't normally care. Some shows I care to watch, some shows I don't. It depends on when they come on. Like Supernatural, I never miss an episode. It's always on at 9 o'clock on the day that it airs, so I watch it. That's just been a tradition since we started watching in season 2. But then there's also shows like Revolution, Continuum, stuff like that. I may not necessarily either A, have the channel that it comes on, so I have to find other methods to watch the TV show, which I may or may not be proud of. I wish that cable didn't cost so much so that I could actually do the right thing. But and it's only with select shows that happens. Most of the time I try and catch stuff on Netflix or on demand on Comcast, because thankfully they've gotten rid of the 6 commercial breaks. It's just 1 now. My only pet peeve with Comcast is the fact that you start watching a show and you have to stop it for whatever reason. You can't go back to where you were later on in the day, or if it goes too far, you can't, like if it resets, you can't fast forward into where you were. It's just, I don't know, it's annoying. So yeah, there's that. There is National Lampoon Vacation TV series in the works. Rumor has it that ABC is working on this new comedy where Chevy Chase and Beverly D'Angelo will be reprising their roles in the show as the Griswolds. I rather like this idea. Instead of trying to reboot the Vacation franchise with Ed Helms, like they were talking before, I honestly like this concept better because, to me, the Vacation films, yeah, the kids were in it. It was about these two. It really was. So to ruin the Vacation series by recasting, it's like putting Ed Helms and doing the Naked Gun series all over again. You can't screw with a classic. Just leave it alone. Create something new. I don't know. But don't reboot stuff constantly. It may not be the greatest like cinematography compared to nowadays as far as like quality wise of picture, not necessarily like the story, but it's neither here nor there. ABC has been tasked with it from Terra Nova's Aaron Kaplan, who will be executive producing the TV series in the vein of Vacation, which it doesn't have me too enthused having Terra Nova's guy in there, considering that show got canceled. But again, that was Fox, and this is ABC, and ABC tends to keep their things around a while. So, maybe. But it's in development for 2014 and 2015. They don't have any writers or anything on board yet, but they're talking about that they're going to have the Chevy Chase and Beverly D'Angelo as the grandparents forced to raise their grandchildren, which would be even funnier if... I think it kind of spawned from that Old Navy commercial where they kind of parodied it and had all the different old Rustys and Audreys, or most of them anyway, and then had the new young Rusty and Audrey, which was kind of funny. So that may have been what spurned this whole idea and concept. But I can't say I'd be lying if I said I wouldn't watch it. Like I do Last Man Standing with Tim Allen, and it's because of who's in it. And then for me, it's who's in it, and then the what it is. Like Last Man Standing is like a reverse Home Improvement, so it's kind of funny. Whereas this, I would definitely watch this. But yeah, shout out on that, and let us know what you think on that. And I can't leave this out. This is monumental for voice actor fans, animation fans, voice actors, whatever. It's I Know That Voice. I myself have not yet seen it. I'm waiting for the DVD because unless somebody wants to gift it to me, I don't really want to buy it twice. That's more so my thing. TFG1 Mike wrote up an awesome review of it on Geekcast Radio. That will be in the show notes as well, exactly where that is. It's a voiceover documentary by John DiMaggio, all about the voice acting industry. He does face-to-face interviews with the voice actors of characters that we know and love, talking about what they like about it, how they got into it, the wonders and beauty of the voice acting and everything else. So it's got a huge list of cast members that are all over the place, all over the spectrum. It's got Kevin Conroy, it's got Mark Hamill, it's got Rob Paulson, Maurice LaMarche, you've got Tara Strong, June Foray. It's basically anybody who's anybody in the voice acting industry is in this documentary. I definitely would recommend it. Again, unless somebody wants to gift me the iTunes or Amazon one, I'll have to wait until DVD. But I really want this film when it comes out. I plan on buying the DVD. I don't care how much it costs. I'm gonna buy it. But if you're interested on any of that, go ahead and check that out in the notes there. And with that, I'll be back after this. Okay, so coming back, we have... Well, let's get into some listener feedback. There wasn't very much last episode. Again, like I said before, I hope it wasn't... I don't know. I hope it was unintentional. I hope it was just because the episode was just so bad you guys had a hard time getting through it. Or busy. As my life seems to be lately. So, Caleb Browning says, fun TV talk. Appears that our TV tastes are very much aligned with one another. Well, that's good to know. At least you won't be bored by us. Walking Dread says, I thought the 10-minute Blitz thing was cool, and it reminded me of a Geek version of Pardon the Interruption from ESPN. I can't say I'm familiar with it. Mike actually came up with the concept, so glad you like it. I hope it works out more in the future. We'll try it out with different things and kind of see how it goes. Justin Washington says, finally finished listening to last episode. I'm not going to lie, it was hard to completely grasp what was going on at times. I think I got it for the most part, though. The TV talk was great, and I'd love to see more of it. Don't worry, you will. Whether it be actual hardware TV or television TV shows, you'll see more of it. He says, when Mike was talking about the classic shows he watches, I was not sure which one he was referring. I think one was Friday Night Lights, but I didn't know what the second one was. I think if it was animation, I think it was Legend of Korra, but I'm not 100%. I can't remember now. But it was Friday Night Lights he was talking about. And he also says, I was also surprised no one mentioned Doctor Who, Community, Game of Thrones, Orange is the New Black, Alphas, Walking Dead. I almost said Walking Dread. Those are some of my favorite current shows, though Alphas is not really current anymore. I watched a little bit of Arrow and was not a big fan. Based on what you said, it gets better, so maybe I'll go back to it. Also, no shame in liking Vampire Diaries. It's the worst title ever for an actual good show. So I have to preface this with saying, I've never seen much of Doctor Who. It's something that kind of bothers me. But Community I have seen. It's alright, but it's that kind of dry comedy. Although I will admit I like it better than The Office or Park and Rec. Those I can't stand. The Community, I actually find it genuinely funny when I watch it. Game of Thrones, I don't get into that whole era. So that's another reason I haven't watched that. That's something my wife would more so like. Orange is the New Black, she actually really liked that show. I've watched a few with her. I'm neither here nor there on it. I really don't care. I've at least gave it a shot, so you can't criticize me there. Alphas, I've heard of it. I think it's a sci-fi show. I could be wrong, but it's not one of those things that hit my radar. And Walking Dead, I find it very, very overrated. My wife watches that one consistently since the first season. I myself have watched some of it with her here or there just because I'm in the same room. So, to me, I don't get the whole zombie craze. I like Resident Evil. It's about as zombie as I get. Vampire Diaries, I don't particularly care for anything with vampires. Mostly because the whole Twilight thing kind of soured that aspect for me. I'm not saying I wouldn't like it. I just would actually have to watch it. So I'll give that a shot. I'll see how that goes. And as far as Arrow's concerned, I definitely recommend the show. I myself, I know we've given a lot of praise to it, but season 1, I will admit, is very hard to watch. I watched the first 6 episodes, and then I just was like, I can't watch this anymore. You can pretty much pick up, if you've watched some of Arrow, you can pretty much go and pick up right at the beginning of season 2, and it recaps the last episode of season 1 in the beginning of season 2, and you kind of get the gist of what's going on. If you're a little confused, just watch the very end or watch the last episode of season 1. But season 2 kind of picks up with a whole new vibe to it. So it's actually kind of nice. Not only pacing, but in background information and explaining how they're going to kind of evolve in the TV version of the DC universe, which, if this is true, and I know that they're doing the Flash show and then they're going to do Gotham, I know Gotham's different network, but it would be nice to see them all cross over at some point, kind of like Flash will. And, you know, they bring Barry Allen in, but they don't actually... You're not going to ever see him in the costume, at least initially, in Arrow. He's going to be his own show. But yeah, I definitely would recommend Arrow, and the mid-season kind of got me psyched for the show, like hardcore psyched for it, so I'd check that out. And then Justin says about the 10 Minutes Blitz that he likes the idea, although he doesn't know if news is the best option for that format because we tended to rush through the news stories to get to our comments. So he really wasn't sure what the story was about. I can kind of get what you're saying there. So I can see where it'd be a little hard to kind of keep up and actually be able to go over it properly, in a sense. We were just more so testing it last episode. Didn't really have any information to input into it, so that was kind of what we used as a sideline thing. Unfortunately, half of it you couldn't hear anyway because, again, Danner's audio was missing. He says some question he could see working for it is favorite current apps people aren't using or websites that you advise checking out. But yeah, I kind of like that idea. We'll have to bring that up in a future episode of the show. Maybe we'll cover those things. I'll just wait until I have backup for that. So yeah, that's the end of the listener feedback.
10-minute blitz.
Welcome again to the 10-minute blitz. The only question we have in here this time, and it's gonna be under 10 minutes, I hope. The only thing we have in here this particular episode is from Justin as well. He says, what TV shows haven't you seen that you have always been meaning to get to? For me, that's kind of a little bit of a difficult question because I'm so very picky on what I watch. That's kind of a tough one for me. Okay, I've seen quite a few different shows and tried them out. I don't really know what I would put in there. I've seen a variety of things. I guess I should probably watch Sherlock because Mike's been kind of really strongly pushing for me to watch it because he finds it really good. I guess I should probably check that one out. I've seen Castle before. I've tried Breaking Bad, couldn't get into it. Person of Interest is okay. I just it's another. I like the concept. I didn't care to continue watching. I tried Revenge, didn't like it. How I Met Your Mother, it's what it is, exactly what it is. I'll watch it if there's nothing else on. That's more so one of those things. Same thing with kind of Community. The Michael J. Fox show I didn't really get into all that much. I really need to find a show. I guess I should probably try that. The Sherlock show. I should probably try. I've been kind of wondering about Sleepy Hollow, so I might actually check that out. I might try Elementary, just because again it's another Sherlock Holmes thing, but it's one of those modern time versions. So I might give that a shot as well. So I guess that really wasn't a good enough answer for you guys. I should probably do a little bit more research on it. I guess we can touch on it again when Mike comes back, because I really have to dig and find something that I care to watch. The problem is I've seen so much different stuff, whether it be on regular TV or animation. I kind of already have singled out and watched what I wanted to watch, more or less. So it's... But again, I mean, I could be just head in rear, kind of locking myself away from shows that could be good. So, I mean, I guess try and persuade me, more or less, of something to try and watch. I'd be willing to give some shows a shot and give you guys what I think about it after I've watched them. I'd be willing to do that. Tried watching the Tomorrow People, though. The first episode was okay. It kind of reminded me of Jumper a little bit. Like X-Men and Jumper kind of put together. Ending of the first episode was kind of not surprising to me. But then again, who knows? I don't know. It could be fine. I'll try and continue it after the first episode. Just depends on timing.
And now our feature presentation.
And getting into the final discussion of the episode, I believe I will touch on podcasting. I noticed a couple episodes back, and kind of throughout, that people were saying that they've listened to a lot of podcasts, and saying that either they can feel very forced or very bad, or they would like to actually start their own. So in this episode, I will talk to you about starting your own podcast, as well as things that you should probably check out to kind of get you on that geeky road. So let's start off with software. People may lead you to believe that you need to spend a fortune to actually be able to podcast. That is not correct. I used to use this program Goldwave when I first started, back when I was doing like a lot of fan dubs. I don't barely do any anymore, unfortunately. I do enjoy it. I haven't had the time to devote to it. But I used to use that, and that was okay. But then somebody turned me on to Audacity. Audacity is free. It is, I believe, currently in like version 2 point something, or a beta version of 2 point something. But it's actually a very versatile and heavily modifiable freeware program. And you can get it from audacity.sourceforge.net. It's free, of course. And then it also, and you can record, you can edit, you can't really do multi-track. I mean, you can, but it's kind of you can't really drag or drop. It's more of, it's there. So, but you can do certain audio effects and everything else. But if you're intending on saving it as an MP3, you have to actually download the lame MP3 plugin, which they also give you a link to on that website. But that's actually what we used here at the Geekcast Radio Network for the starting of it. I used to edit All Things Transformers, which was my first podcast, which we've decided we're officially going to kill this year. After we go through, because it's the 30th anniversary of Transformers, we're going to jump through that whole hoop and end the show properly on its 7-year anniversary. Or, no, 6-year anniversary, I'm sorry. It was started a year before Geekcast Radio. So, it's Geekcast Radio will turn 5, it'll turn 6, and then we're going to send it on its merry way. But again, I digress. So, yeah, the software, we actually used it at the beginning of the network. It's, funny thing enough, is Mike actually used to record his side of the audio, and I used to record my side of the audio before we had call recorders. And we used to mix it in there. It is not easy to mix in Audacity, because things don't necessarily line up. If you're just recording yourself or adding an intro, outro, or like a couple of other things, it's fine. If you're using like a, which I'll get into later, a call recorder, you can actually import it into there after you've added like your intro clip, and then have the entire conversation there, and then add your outro clip, and then you should be fine. But it's also good for short recordings as well, or just really anything, if you don't want to spend the money. Now, Also on that free gravy train, this is my second recommendation. Some people recommend getting call recorders. Some people think that you can record on your end. It's actually preferable to do both. If you're recording a podcast with other people, it's actually not a bad idea if both of you have a call recorder running. So you both can record the entire call on your end. In case someone else's call recorder disintegrates during the record, I've had it where Mike Blanchard, TFG1 Mike, and I will record both of us using our own call recorders in case one of them is better than the other, audio quality-wise, in case there's hiccups or something else. Because I know sometimes with Skype it gets a little buzzy, or depending on people's connections, it can fizzle out on certain people at certain times. Like if you're loading other programs, or you have Dropbox, or you have various other things running on the internet while you're doing Skype, it doesn't like that too much. So it can sometimes affect that. But you can get MP3 Skype recorder. You can Google it. It is free if you'd like it. I'm sure I'm going to forget to include it in the show notes, despite me saying it here. So go ahead if you want to know, and I will post that. But you can pretty much Google it. It's a free plugin. You just install it, run it. You can do stereo mono up to 192K with it. It works really well. I've used it on more than one occasion. So there's that. Third thing I'd recommend is if you're going to do separate calls or separate recorders on the calls, I would use Dropbox. Why do you use Dropbox, you ask? Well, we recently just started doing that. We used to use our FTP buffer account, which sometimes we'll refer to during the show. And people are like, what's the buffer? It's where we used to dump all of our files when we do separate records or have other people edit. If you install Dropbox on both your PCs, for those that don't know, I'm sure most people know because it's usually integrated with phones nowadays, at least if you have Android. You can dump files related to the podcast or for editing or for, the separate calls or whatever into this single folder, and it synchronizes to both your computers. So once somebody deletes the file, it goes bye-bye, or somebody adds a file, it says hello on the other end. So it's kind of a nice feature to have when you're podcasting. Just don't let it run while you're actually doing the call. Now, the next thing I'd like to touch on is audio hardware. This can be a little tricky. We've all, and I'm not saying you have to spend a fortune, we've all started out at the very, very bottom. Myself, I started with a more or less $10 pair of headphones, real junk, and the analog $9 Labtech or Logitech microphone. It works, but when you're recording with other people that have higher end equipment, you're definitely going to notice the difference. For instance, early on in All Things Transformers version 1.0, before we went 2.0, and the TFG1 podcast, the audio quality isn't that great. And it's because we all were at bare bones, cheap equipment. Again, none of us make money off this. It's just something we do because we love conversing with other geeks, and as our slogan is, unleashing the geek in you. So it helps keep us up to date and knowledgeable in all things geek too. So, damn, I keep getting on tangents. But I'm doing pretty good. I'm not really rambling for a podcast where I've made it past 10 minutes. So if you want to hear a really bad train wreck, listen to Pirates of the Caribbean Spotlight on M-Ware. I screwed that up royally. But yeah, the hardware, I ended up eventually upgrading to it's a Logitech ClearChat Pro USB headset. They don't make this particular model anymore. It's old. I've had it since like year one of Geekcast Radio. I upgraded. It was like $35. It's got a microphone on it, and it's a nice USB headset. Only problem with that is when you have a USB headset, you can either hear when people are moving their head, because it tends to have like a little sound like that, that will turn up on the record sometimes, and you really don't want that because it's distracting. You can hear clicking. When you have the microphone and you're actually using it, while it may be nice to be able to press the mute button on your headset to stop the mouthpiece, when you're talking or when you're breathing, you're going to hear it because the microphone's directly in front of your face, or in front of your nose. The other thing that you can do to kind of alleviate that is actually put the microphone almost above your nose. And the reason I say that is because it'll still pick up the audio from your mouth of you speaking, but it won't pick up your breathing. And it can be a little annoying because you'll see it in front of your nose, but you're not going to pick up in there, and then, stuff like that. So it's nicer. But then eventually I had the extra cash to invest in a real microphone. And then of course I asked, Mike from the show, his thoughts, and I kind of asked around, and I saw the Blue microphones pop up the most. Blue microphones, they make the Nessie, they make the Yeti Pro, the Snowball. Blue has managed to make a very, very we'll just say great product. They've made such a superb product for a USB microphone. The audio quality on it is like you're sitting next to the person. So when you hear it recording, it's actually in front of you, and it's so crystal clear. And when you're recording with people that have lesser equipment, you're going to notice. Or they're going to notice. You won't notice as much. I mean, you will a little bit on your headset. But again, I digress. I'm currently wearing that Logitech headset while I'm recording into my Blue Yeti. It's not the Yeti Pro, it's cheaper version, but it's THX certified. I have a shock mount and a pop screen filter in front of it. It's kind of got one built in a little bit. There's settings on it for gain. There's settings on it to change the whether it's the cardioid or omnidirectional or bidirectional. You can input an actual headset into it. It's on a nice steel stand. Nice big heavy microphone. I've had thoughts of upgrading it eventually, but at this point in time, until I can actually build my actual studio that I want to build, this is what I'm sticking with. It sounds great. So this is actually a $100 microphone. The pop screen filter was like $20, and then the headset. So you're looking at about $150 altogether if you want like higher end, just basic equipment to plug into. And then rounding out to the final bit of stuff I'm going to cover for the podcasting segment, this episode at least, is hosting. When you're hosting a podcast, you want to, for one, you want to find a host that's going to support it. And I see a lot of people use Podbean and stuff like that. I myself, I don't find that very helpful. Yeah, it's easier, but you're probably better off buying or paying for a web host, buying your own .com or .net or whatever you choose to use, and hosting your own files. The only caveat to that is you have to make sure that the host will allow you to do so. You usually have to have the website, which WordPress I would recommend, just because you can kind of keep up with it. And there are plugins where you can automate the RSS feed, which can be sent elsewhere. I made the mistake when I started doing all this. I did everything the hard way. That's just how I did it. Now I'm doing things a lot more automated because I don't have time to sit here and babysit every element of the stuff. early Geekcast Radio, I actually hand typed all of the RSS feeds per episode. So every time an episode went into the iTunes or the website, I was sitting there in an RSS editor typing all the BS code in there and all the information for the podcast, and then you still had to run the podcast through iTunes and just add the art and the metadata, and it's I'm so glad I don't do that anymore. But I also synchronized those RSS files by folder and used Google FeedBurner to distribute it. That's also a no-no. Don't use like a FeedBurner or a distributor like that. I would only recommend that if you're using something like Podbean or something like, or somewhere where you don't own it. Where if you have your own .com or your own domain and web host, you're better off using like Blueberry's PodPress plugin in WordPress to automate the category into an RSS feed, and using that, because it will actually distribute it directly from the website and you own the feed at all times. I'm still in the transition of moving everything away from FeedBurner. I finally stopped handwriting all of the actual RSS feeds, and we're using the stuff from the site that's already from the episode blog article posts. So there's that. You can get web hosts as cheap as $2-3 a month to however much you want to spend. It just depends. I use Media Temple. I really like them. I think our promo code is Geekcast Radio or something like that, or GCRN. It's one of the two. I don't know. It may not even be that. I haven't logged into that in a while. But I use Media Temple. I actually like them. I used to use iPower. I know somebody that uses Yahoo. Yahoo tends to give you a lot of 500 internal errors when you're on WordPress. I don't understand why. Just something about it, and plus Yahoo modifies WordPress. I don't recommend them at all. Same thing with iPower. I don't recommend them either. They have a lot of database issues. Back from when I had a PHP website on there, I had so many issues. I got sick of them and I left. And that's when I went with Media Temple, and I haven't looked back, because they will get back with you right away and they will fix your issue as best they can. It's a nicer home than anywhere else that I've had this site. We actually moved the site from Media Temple to Site 5 because of the growing hits and the growing exposure. We needed more bandwidth, and so I moved to Site 5, which again I don't recommend them either, because they migrated the entire Media Temple account for free, but the problem with that is when they did it, they're supposedly an unlimited web host. You get unlimited bandwidth, unlimited data, unlimited everything. Apparently unlimited isn't truly unlimited because we were getting so many hits and so much bandwidth usage, which surprisingly we didn't have that issue on Media Temple. Just saying. But again, I digress. They essentially told me I had the option of, and this was after a month and a half of being with them, I could optimize and have the site cache itself, which I was doing anyway, and I'm still doing. The funny thing about it is they actually told me I had to leave unless I wanted to pay, I think it was like $100 and some odd a month for a fraction of the space we were getting on Media Temple. And I told them to bite me, and we moved back to Media Temple, which I won't leave if I never have to. So just little horror story. So do your research when you're going through that. The cheapest may not be the best, and the most expensive may not be the best. Just kind of depends on what you're looking for from the host. I know I said I'll be done, but there's one other thing that I'll get into. And it has to do with paid software. If you're going to get paid software, I recommend Adobe Audition if you have a PC. I think people that have a Mac use GarageBand. I'm not familiar with it. I know you can get the Adobe products on a Mac too. There's definitely a difference. I used to use Sound Booth. I still use it to some degree. It kind of depends from episode to episode, or what PC I'm using. But Adobe Sound Booth is more basic, whereas Audition is like Sound Booth mixed with when Adobe acquired Cool Edit Pro. They mixed kind of the two and came up with Audition. And Audition allows you to do a lot of the razor blade chopping of clips, and you don't have to re-render every time, kind of like Sound Booth. I know it's more expensive, but you know, I like it better. More features. So I think I've dragged this episode on as long as it can be. I'm surprised I made it to an hour, honestly, or over an hour. Thank you for joining me. I'm sorry if this was a little too tech jargony. I've been podcasting for 6-7 years now, so I was trying to relay any information I can. So I hope it helps. If you guys got any more questions on podcasting stuff, feel free to ask. I don't mind helping. I don't mind guesting on people's stuff. If you want pointers or you want stuff to kind of help you out in some of it, I will make myself available. I have weird hours, so I mean, I'll emails I definitely will reply to, or Twitter. I'm sitting on social media on my phone all day. Thank you, smartphones. Still hate Sprint, but thank you, smartphones. So, in closing, thanks as always for joining us here on Altered Geek Unlimited. You can contact us in the following ways. You can call the voicemail line at 502-526-5821. Please remember to leave your name and also the podcast you're leaving it for. You can email us, feedback at geekcastradio.com, with any of your questions, comments, feedback. We love it all. You can visit the episode post on geekcastradio.com. You can visit the Facebook fan page by searching Geekcast Radio Network. You can also find us on Twitter at GeekCastRadio, #AlteredGeek. My Twitter handle is at SCP21, as always. So, as always, get altered, get geeky with the Altered Geeks. See you next time.